The offseason is the time where free agent players and their agents negotiate new contracts with teams based on what they believe their value is, along with what their value to the team can be moving forward. And for the biggest stars, this can lead to some huge paydays. The problem comes when these stars' production starts to fade on the court after signing a new massive contract, and they quickly find themselves signed to some of the worst contracts in the league for teams. This is exactly what Bleacher Report has covered in a recent article, where they proposed 4 trades that would move the worst contracts in the NBA to new homes to help their current teams free themselves up some extra cash. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first proposal in the article is between the San Antonio Spurs and the Phoenix Suns, where the Spurs receive Bradley Beal and 3 second-round picks in exchange for Harrison Barnes, Keldon Johnson, and Julian Champagnie. Bradley Beal's contract was one that basically the entire basketball world, except for the Wizards front office apparently, knew was going to age horrifically when it was signed, and that is absolutely what has happened and is still the case. And the Suns basically maxed out all of their resources to acquire him, and while they planned for their team's big 3 of stars to be able to handle a large brunt of the load, that proved to be an outdated game plan as they got swept in the first round of the playoffs. The Suns have admittedly had a pretty solid offseason this summer given the circumstances, convincing Tyus Jones to take less money to fill their gap at point guard, but in an ideal world, they do rid themselves of Bradley Beal's contract before his play regresses even further. The Spurs are a group that are in a position to take on his contract because they're in the early stages of a ramp up from their rebuild and aren't urgently needing to compete yet. Any help that they can get Victor Wembanyama early in his career is welcomed, and while Beal's best days are likely behind him, he is still a big step up on the wing compared to what the Spurs currently have. Giving up Keldon Johnson may seem tough on paper, but Johnson's best year came during the Spurs' worst season, and his production took a big step backwards last year playing alongside Victor Wembanyama. Harrison Barnes just arrived in San Antonio, but his salary is needed to match the offer, and Champagnie is basically there for the same purpose, so I do think that the Spurs take this in a heartbeat, because ultimately it is very good for Victor Wembanyama's development. For the Suns, the name of the game is acquiring more depth, and while Keldon Johnson isn't quite as good as Bradley Beal is, he is still a talented scorer on a cheaper contract. Harrison Barnes would be a terrific depth forward for their rotation too, to give Kevin Durant some breaks, and overall, they would probably be a better and more cohesive team as a result of this. It's not a perfect trade by any means, but when dealing with these kinds of contracts, it never will be, so it seems as good as it can be given the circumstances. The next proposal in the article is between the Denver Nuggets and the Chicago Bulls, where the Nuggets receive Zach Lavine and a pick swap in exchange for Michael Porter Jr. and Zeke Naji. The Bulls entered this offseason fully prepared to field offers for Zach Lavine in hopes of an amicable parting of ways, but the issue was that there just wasn't that much interest in him on the market. He's coming off of a down year and a serious injury that required surgery, and his contract is tough to justify having on the payroll. What that does mean, though, is that the cost of acquiring Lavine is likely much lower, so he could prove to be an intriguing buy low candidate for a team in need of an offensive boost like the Denver Nuggets do now find themselves in. The Nuggets lost starting shooting guard Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to the Magic in free agency and didn't really do anything to replace him. Jamal Murray has a terrific track record in big games, but Michael Porter Jr. is sneakily another bad contract that needs to be moved, so this trade is more of a swapping of them than it is an unloading. Lavine's athleticism and his ability to finish at the basket would benefit tremendously playing alongside Nikola Jokic's passing prowess, and in Chicago, Michael Porter Jr. wouldn't have nearly as much pressure to be anything more than a sharpshooter regardless of his contract, because it seems as though the Chicago Bulls are trending towards a rebuild anyway. Both players have 3 years left on their current contracts, and for the Nuggets in particular, if Lavine hits, then they've easily got the firepower to get back to the top of the Western Conference, while simultaneously getting away from Michael Porter Jr.'s max contract that will never pay off. They may need to add in a little sweetener to their offer to get the Bulls fully across the finish line, but overall, again, this is something that could spark real negotiations. The next proposal in the article is between the Los Angeles Clippers and the Washington Wizards, where the Clippers receive Jordan Poole in exchange for Norman Powell and PJ Tucker. The Clippers lost Paul George in free agency this year and replaced him with some defensive role players to serve a different purpose, but this trade's intention is to replenish some of the offensive firepower George leaves behind. From the get-go, though, I've got to say that even though that's the idea behind it in theory, I don't think that would be the reality whatsoever. Jordan Poole had one outstanding breakout year in Golden State, and it helped them win a title, but outside of that season, he has never been very efficient as a scorer, and it's gotten worse and worse in each of the next 2 years. Last year, Jordan Poole was expected to flourish in a bigger role in Washington, and he played worse than anyone could have possibly imagined. The one silver lining is that he did actually start to play better when he was benched and moved to a team's sixth-man role, which is the role that he would be on in the Clippers. But I still can't wrap my head around this trade because Norman Powell is just a flat-out better sixth man than Poole is. Powell has years of experience in that role and had years scoring nearly 20 points per game while doing it much more efficiently, coming off of a season where he shot a red-hot 44% from three. Jordan Poole may have more upside in theory, but is wildly erratic and unreliable, whereas Powell may not have the flash that Poole has, but the substance is far more impactful and reliable, so this wouldn't make any sense for the Clippers to do even out of desperation. And finally, the last proposal from the article is between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Portland Trailblazers, where the Lakers receive Jeremy Grant in exchange for D'Angelo Russell, Jared Vanderbilt, Maxwell Lewis, and a first-round pick. The Lakers successfully re-signed LeBron James this summer, but since then, they haven't really done anything. Drafting Dalton Knecht is the biggest addition that the team has made to their roster so far, which isn't great for a side that has been in the play-in tournament in each of the last 2 seasons. Every year, we see underrated yet productive players fly under the radar on bad teams, then when they get traded to a more prominent team, everyone wonders why they weren't paying more attention to them before, and Jeremy Grant could easily be an example of that this year if he is moved in a trade like this. Grant is coming off of a season where he put up 21 points per game, shooting 45% from the field and 40% from three, improving tremendously as a shooter and overall shot creator over the course of his career, and on top of all of that, he's an extremely reliable and versatile defensive talent too. Slotting him alongside Anthony Davis and LeBron James in the Lakers' front court makes for a solid fit on both ends of the floor, there's no two ways about it. Grant has never needed heavy usage to be effective, and he provides more of what the Lakers need than D'Angelo Russell does. The motivation for the Blazers to do this is, of course, the first-round pick in addition to the players as a nice cherry on top, and the fact that they don't have to commit long-term to D'Angelo Russell, which is the case because this is the last year of his current contract. The Lakers desperately need a boost, but are limited in what they can realistically pull off, so if this, or anything like this, is on the table, they should be all over it without any hesitation. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about these potential trades. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.